How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with The Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at Orochi Volume 2 by Kazuo Umezz. This was a pretty fun book, and it actually features 3 stories this time around. I really do like what Viz is doing, putting out the whole series in 4 volumes, collecting multiple stories at a time. And all of these are pretty good, but they go in very interesting and different ways, with Orochi being the thing that kind of connects all of them together. And I do like we get a little bit more of a glimpse as to who she is. She'll do things like follow a character around for years and years of their life just trying to observe them. We get the sense that, much more that she is immortal, but we also, especially in the second story, get to see more of the extent of her powers. She's a really interesting character, and I do kind of wish she was in the books more. There's several times in the story where she's either blatantly not trying to interfere, or just the story is more about the characters that are just for this episode. And I do get, she's kind of just the connective tissue. It's a way to do an anthology. I do hope that later on, though, we do get to learn more about her, because she is pretty interesting. And there's like the last story in here, she's not in it very much, but each of the stories are different. We get like a Rear Window, but with this bratty kid. We get an evil child with like meteoroid powers. But I think the best one has to be the first story about this baby who survives a near-death experience. Orochi follows him throughout a good chunk of his life, and we get to see how this experience has changed the family. The mother's become very cruel to this kid, and it is just a very interesting and in-depth and super dark character study. Yeah, don't let the moments of cartoony artwork fool you. There's some dark stuff in here, and it's one of those stories that when you get to the end, you have to really almost reread it just to kind of get all the little implications when that final shoe is dropped. Overall, I really did like Volume 2, and I can't wait to read the next 2. I do have them ready to go, but this was a pretty good book, and if you guys want to see the physical release, as well as me talking in more details and showing some of the art, again, no major spoilers, but if you want a closer look at the stories, let's go ahead and switch over to the close-up camera. Alright, here we are inside the castle, taking a closer look at Orochi Volume 2. Right off the bat, I want to give Viz some major props for keeping the design of these similar across all the volumes. We get this nice papery stuff, which is a little fragile, unfortunately, but it still looks and feels really cool and really does good stuff with this line work. And we also get Orochi in foil, and this time around the foil is more of an orangey color, so it's going to change as we go across the volumes. We also get the spine here, and it does continue that image. If you guys remember my review of the first volume, this is the wind that Orochi blows in on in her very first comic, and if you get all 4 volumes, you put them side by side, and you get a continuing image. The front cover has Orochi on the rocks. This is taken from one of the stories, but I won't spoil how we get here, but it is quite the moment. And there she is in the middle there. And the back will have her doing her famous point. And there's the kid from Prodigy. We get the blurb and $26.99. Inside, the end papers are the same thing, but a little oranger. There's the title page, Orochi by Kazuo Umezz, Volume 2. And we will get pictures in the beginning and the end of this book in this kind of grayed out method. In the table of contents, we have Prodigy, Home, and Key. So 3 stories this time around. The back does have that author bio, same as the last time. And we do also get the legal on the back. This is where it says Perfect Edition. And we also see the first printing is from July of 2022, and this is rated T+. Anyway, After that, we get into the stories proper. I'm not going to do any major spoilers, but I do want to take a moment, analyze some of the story, show you guys some of the art, and talk about a few of the moments in here. So no major spoilers, but let's take a look at the stories. And first story we have is going to be the story called Prodigy. They're all in this similar title format. Anyway, we get to see Orochi and a little Easter egg to Cat-Eyed Boy there. But we get to see that she occasionally picks people to follow around and observe for the whole life. I really do like this motif. It shows you that Orochi is curious about what it's like to be human and how hard for her it is to understand that, but also does stress her immortality factor. But we get this mother with a baby, and she's visiting a shrine because she's thankful that she's finally gotten a kid. And all in all, seems to be a happy, peaceful life. We get to see that there's a successful father, she's a happy mother, they got a sweet little baby, but we know this isn't going to last very long. There's a burglar in the baby's nursery, and he has this knife, and he holds up the mother and kid. Yeah, we suddenly went into a very desperate situation really quick. Now, there's one particularly gruesome panel. I won't spoil, I won't show it, just it's pretty dark. But basically, the criminal does get caught, but the baby gets stabbed in the neck. Gee. But we get to see him grown up, and the other kids, he's kind of he's an outcast for his scar, and his parents won't tell him how he got the scar, but we get to see the kids slapping it as a form of bullying. He goes to his mother, and we get to see the changed relationship with him and the mother, with the mother slapping him right off the bat too, and then saying, no playing, only studying. The idea that she almost lost her child once, and is going to kind of force him to work and hard and be harder and succeed, you know, just like, hey, I realized your life is fragile, now you're not gonna mess it up, and ironically, kind of forcing him into messing it up. But yeah, this is it's basically torturous, and it does make the beginning of the story hard to read. Granted, that's the point of this whole thing, but to see the dad becoming drunk and depressed and yelling with the mother and the kid getting slapped again, yeah, it is kind of hard to read through this one, but it does have a point once you get to the end, and the way the kid grows and matures, and the relationship between him and his mother. And again, we do follow this kid as he grows up for quite some time. You know, we do get to see the whole story of his sad and depressing life, and we do get to see a few moments where Orochi does try to intervene, like she tries to come in and help finish the studies, but the mother comes in and she has to run away. And there is a fun sequence with the train, which I won't give that one away either, but it is just a very hard life of his, and we do get a key moment in his life years later where he doesn't know I got the scar, but he'll go to the library and look through the newspapers, and we get to see his reaction when he finally sees that moment. Yeah, it is a really good and interesting character study, and when you get to the end, there is this plot moment that kind of recontextualizes the whole thing, and you basically have to go back and reread through this whole story, because when you know the final context, it really does change everything, and it is quite the moment. So while it may be a little hard to get through, it is going somewhere, and let me tell you, it is very impactful. It's a good story. After that, we have Home, and Home is on kind of more of the goofier horror side when we actually see where it's going. It does have heart and weight behind it, and it also has a weird plot element at the end, but it is more weird than big and impactful like Prodigy was. But it still is fun, and I do like to see Orochi more involved, like she is in this one. But let's talk about the story. We get to see this small village that Orochi wanders past one day. We get to see a little baby of a poor farming family, And we get to find out that when this baby grows up, he wants to go to the city and make a name for himself. And we get this sad scene where the mother follows him to the exit of the village, and she starts crying, and he has to go on without her. Yeah, that's really sad. He has a friend in the city, and he thinks, okay, I have a setup, I'm gonna work hard, I'm going to make something of myself. But turns out the friend was stealing his rent money, and then he just stole everything and got out of there, and even accumulated debts in his name. So now he has less than what he started with, and Orochi will eventually wander past him again later in life. And I do like the idea that Orochi just kind of wanders everywhere, and she sees this guy and goes, "That's that guy I knew from when he was a baby." Well, it turns out he's become a lot tougher and hardened. He's a gangster now, and he gets in this big fight, and it's going to not look too good for him, and Orochi will kind of instinctively step in, kick all their butts, and go, "Oops, I didn't mean to do that." So I do like seeing her power there. There's her, basically, she just only has to touch him with the finger once, and they go down. But Orochi remembers the village and decides to take a train to see it and figure out what happened since the kid left. And surprise, surprise, the guy's getting out of the hospital early, even though he doesn't look like he should be out, and is going to go home and see his family as well. Orochi, of course, tells this lie about how, oh, I was a kid there too, but I was only there for a little bit. You may not remember me. But we do get this bit of nostalgia where he comes back, he sees the town, there's the post where he left his mom, and yeah, everything looks fun. It's good to be back in the village. But of course, not everything's going to be great. He'll eventually talk to his friends, and he remembers this story about this girl in the village who he locked in the shrine. They have a shrine with a rock in it that they think is probably a meteorite. And after she gets locked in there, it becomes kind of strange for her, and we find out that she has this kid. And yeah, after maybe saying too much, one of his friends dies, and looks like we'll get to meet the kid right beside the dead body. Yeah, this is a creepy kid story, and it's a case where everyone in the village is going to be terrified of this kid. He forces the other kids to play with him. The teacher can't do anything about it. The adults are terrified and really only get up once he goes to sleep. It's pretty crazy. And we do get this moment where Orochi's trying to defend one of the kids. He basically has this staring power, and it's going to be, yeah, Orochi versus another supernatural being, and we get to see, like, he causes her to bleed, but her blood is going to make this big crack that will kind of, like, automatically defend her. It's kind of weird, but I won't go much farther than the plot than that, other than to say that this does get to be a pretty big, crazy, and over-the-top story. It's much more supernatural and much more of a standard horror story than you think, but it does go big. It does encompass this whole town. It does go nuts, and then again, it does have a weird plot element at the end, but a fun little creepy evil kid story. But anyway, after that we get Key, and Key will be about another kid. You know, we had the young kid in Prodigy, we had the evil kid in Home, and now we get to meet Liar. Yeah, Orochi moves into these apartments. There's this kid, and the first thing he does is lie about which way it is to the apartment that Orochi has moved into, which happens to be where he lives, and we get to see that this kid is just a compulsive liar. The other kids are like, "Did you see the baseball?" "No, I didn't." Let me throw it in the incinerator. And yeah, no, he is quite the pill, and you really get to see that no one is going to trust him. He scarfs down his breakfast, and then we get to see him not wanting to go to school and saying, I feel sick, but of course he's caught in his lie because he's a huge liar and no one believes him, but he just wants to watch the TV at a blaring loud volume. And we get to see the poor father who works the night shift just like, let me sleep, I want to sleep. But then we get into kind of the meat of the matter. Remember, the story's called Key. We're introduced to the spare key to the house so he can let himself in. And one day when he's home alone, he's going to be up to some mischief, and he decides to climb the balcony, and that's where he sees the neighbor kid who has been deathly ill, and the mother is putting the kid out of her misery. Yeah, it is a dark and gruesome scene, and he of course sees this. He runs away hoping not to be caught, but what does he leave? The titular key falls out of his pocket. So now we have this kind of rear window scenario where this kid that no one believes is the only witness to a murder. And we do get the moment where the mother doesn't believe him, but boy, yeah, she is super, super angry and wanting to get at this kid. And the action really heats off when the kid's left alone at home for an extended period of time, and the person that knows has the key to your house. So time to barricade the door and get your slingshot ready. We actually get him running around in a long chase sequence throughout the city. But yeah, no, this is, again, barely Orochi in there. We do get, little hints at like, something's telling me to keep an eye on that boy, and she does show up a little bit at the end, but this is basically Kazuo Umezz doing his own Rear Window, but with a kid-type story. And again, it does have, like, prolonged chase sequences and action. It's fun. I think the best one in here is definitely got to be Prodigy. It's really hard hitting. I liked how Home had all that supernatural stuff in it. And then the last one, Key, was a very different take on that sort of Rear Window approach. So overall, all three stories are pretty good. I do wish there was more of Orochi herself in here, but as a sort of framing mechanism for Kazuo Umezz to do anthology horror, I think it's still pretty fun. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my manga playlist where you can find my review for the first one of these, as well as other stuff like Junji Ito and Chainsaw Man and Blood on the Tracks. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.